Hey folks, Richard here. My blog, Facts for Working People, URL, we know what's up.blogspot.com. And I want to comment, you got me in, this is a spur of the moment thing. I got my Punjabi top on because a friend from who was back in India brought me this back years ago, and it's really nice to wear on a summer's evening when you're bedding down for the night or watch some TV. But anyway, I'm a little disappointed with the defeat of English defeat against Argentina. All the critics are talking about, I'm not a great football analyst, but why the hell I agree. I think it was Rooney's comment that England got one up and then they went and just sat back. You can't allow a team of that of character in the World Cup, the former champions of the world, to 25 minutes to just keep kicking at you. A goal's going to go in at some point. So there's that aspect to it. But I'll tell you the other thing I'm a bit tired of. And I'll start with this. I was in a pub just down from the Castle Hotel in Dublin when the British Lions were playing. And Britain was playing South Africa. And I'm standing at the bar in that pub. It's right on the corner there, just down from the castle. I forget what it's called. And there was a packed night in there. And you got the English in there, and you got the Irish in there. And, I always funny when I see people with, English stuff because of the history of colonialism, particularly in Ireland. So as I'm standing there drinking a pint, this old guy was walking by, and he's a bit uneasy. He's got two men on either side of him, maybe relatives, maybe his sons, I don't know. And as he's walking by me, they're fucking English, are they? You're fucking English. Come on, I could hear him slagging off the English. Now, I have no problem with that. I know the history of Ireland. I have no problem with it. However, it gets a little old when it becomes a practice. And I'll tell you why. I mean, my DNA... I did a DNA thing. I don't give a shit about DNA, but I did it for just to check. It's predominantly Irish, not in North Europe, but predominantly Irish. I'm not Irish. I'm culturally English, okay, with Irish ancestry. I'm not like Americans going and say they used to get on me. They'd hear my accent. Oh, you're English. Oh, I'm Irish. A big deal. 1 in 6 families in London was, I think, Irish when I was there. You think you'd never seen any Irish, and it used to bug me a little bit, just going on and being, because they couldn't even point to it on a map. But anyway, so it sort of bugs me with all this football stuff, and they're attacking the English team. And here's what gets me about it. I've travelled. I was in Iraq. I remember when I went to Iraq. The British screwed them in Iraq. The Iraqis were nice to me. I don't know whether they were Sunni. I don't know whether they were Shia or Christians or Zoroastrian or anything. They were nice to me, and they could have been rotten. The British colonialism screwed over all the Arab nations. I know what British colonialism has done, but there's British colonialism, and there's workers. There were black people and white people and Asian people and Italian Americans that went to Vietnam and during that horrible war where they killed 3 million Vietnamese. I separate those workers that went from the people that sent them there. And you've got to separate the colonial power. When you're talking about colonialism, there's a working class in England. And I'll tell you about football. Football is a working class game. And it's watched by the working class. And a lot of the players make a lot of money. And that sort of thing, compared to when I was young. But a lot of them are from the working class, and some of them, the black ones, the African ones, are from poverty. A lot of them, and to just to talk about, well, I saw somebody on the internet tonight. I've changed my mind. It was between 2 colonizers. The English colonizers. Well, those guys on that team aren't the colonizers. It's as if there's no class analysis for you. British workers have supported Irish workers. British workers have supported workers abroad. There's a difference between an English working class, English working class and the colonizers. Of course, if you're from just like Americans, when you come from a colonizing country, in a powerful country like Americans do, the arrogance and the confidence and the air of I'm special that the bourgeois have, is filters down into the working class. But this horrible attack on the colonizers. What are those guys? Suckers, the colonizer? The guy in the goal, I don't know him, Pickford, he's a colonizer. A lot of these football is a working class game, and a lot of working class kids get into it, and some of them make a lot of money. you know. But this whole idea that you can't separate that. Now they come up the thing because the Argentinian team had a big banner, the Malvinas, which is what they call the Falklands, is Argentinian. And what if the English had done that? What if the English players had done that? I'm not saying you shouldn't have politics in football. You should have it everywhere. But this idea that you're talking about colonizers. I remember one time when I went up to it was to protest the weapons going to Central America from up near Concord here. They shipped them out of that area near Clayton, somewhere around there. I went up there. That was the time that guy, a train ran over his legs. He got in front of a train to stop. He's still alive. Cut off his run over his legs. And there was a troop of military there, young army guys, and the officer or the sergeant or whatever was there with him on the other side of the fence. And some, I call them liberals, were shouting to turn the guns around and don't disobey your officers. And I turned to her and I said, if you're asking to disobey his officer, you'd better be able to back him up if he does that. He's not going to do that. You can't defend him. He could be executed for that. So there's a big difference between the colonizers and the troops, the working class at the fodder for the colonizers, and to just go on about this with and even the English team or the colonizers. No, they're not. Yeah, they're not the colonizers. The whole football industry, just like every industry, is owned by billionaires and a different class of people. And that's why when I know a guy who's a bit of a right winger goes on about the players and what they earn. Well, let's look at the people that own the damn team. But first, anyway, it sort of bugged me, that did. It really did.